Why should I save for retirement if the world is on the brink of collapse? What's even the point of saving for a future I may never see? Shouldn't I just live it up while I'm young and able to? I've heard this sentiment from people on the internet as well as people in my own life so many times now. And I get why. Everywhere you look, there's more bad news. Overpopulation, climate change, disease, AI taking over the planet. And I think our sense of dread has only been exacerbated in recent years because of the pandemic. So the natural question when it comes to saving and investing money is, why even bother? But I worry that this existential, cynical outlook is going to destroy a whole generation of financial futures. When I hear statements like, there's no point in saving for retirement, we'll all be dead anyways, all I can think of are those same exact people in their 70s and 80s still clocking into work, not because they want to, but because they have to. Because they never invested in their financial future, and now they're forced to continue working just to make ends meet. And that isn't a paranoid fantasy, but a reality for so many retirees. A recent survey showed that 37% of retirees have no retirement savings, up from 30% in 2022. And we see these supposedly heartwarming stories about older folks who are still working in their older years and people helping them out, like this one about an 89-year-old pizza delivery man, but they're mostly heartbreaking.
We collected over $12,000 for you.
That's all yours.
All yours.
No.
Yep.
I don't believe this.
Absolutely.
To me, stories like this highlight two important things. One, America needs a better social safety net for its people. And two, why we as young people should prioritize our saving and investing of our financial futures. But that begs the question again, what if we don't have a future? On that note, let's dive into how existential dread is ruining personal finance and what we can do about it. By the way, I'm Kara and I make videos every other week about money, media, society, and intentional living. So if you want to see more videos like this, go check out my other video essays and be sure to subscribe. All right, let's talk about the end of the world. From threats of World War III to climate change, it's hard to convince ourselves that something as trivial as planning our retirement fund is worthy of our concern. I mean, the world is ending. We should live it up now while we're alive and the world isn't on fire, right? I totally empathize with this line of thinking because it's hard not to fall into that mindset if you consume any kind of media. Whether it's news headlines, Facebook posts, TikTok videos, hyperbolic messaging that promotes doomsday narratives are inescapable. And that's not to say there isn't truth to some of them. The war in Ukraine and the documented increasing of global temperatures due to human activity are real threats that humanity is facing. And they're scary, so it makes sense that on a personal level, we feel unsure about our futures or if we're even gonna have one at all. But the problem with this thinking is that fear distorts our ability to make good decisions. There are countless existential threats facing our generation, but when it comes to our finances, the real existential threat is short-term thinking. It's internalizing doomsday narratives at the expense of protecting our future selves. We have to remember that hyperbole sells. We live in a digital economy where attention is currency. To get more clicks, a lot of times nuance is left behind. It's also good to remind ourselves that we're not alone in feeling like the end is near. Many generations before us, arguably every generation since the dawn of humankind, has felt like the world was going to end soon. In the 1950s, schools practiced duck and cover drills because the threat of nuclear warfare was so high. Diseases have come and gone that if we'd have lived through them, we probably would have thought there was no future to come. From the Black Plague, which wiped out 1/3 of Europe and lasted for hundreds of years, to AIDS in the 1970s before they'd identified the disease, and it seems like people were dying out of nowhere. And this isn't to invalidate any of the fears we're experiencing today, but to offer some helpful perspective. As this Vox article summarizes nicely, humanity is at its objectively best point in history. We're living longer, people are rising out of poverty, infant mortality is down as are deaths from war and disease, world hunger has fallen, and worldwide education and democracy have increased. I think it's important to remember the progress that we're continually making. And similarly, I think it's important not to just throw in the towel, give up, and say, hey, that's it. Might as well live for today, not think about tomorrow because it's not coming. Because much of why we are living in the objectively best time for humans is because of the people who didn't just give up or throw in the towel. On that note, I want to dive into the topic of climate change specifically because that is by far the most popular reason I've heard for the people's existential attitude towards money. Because why save money if climate change is just going to kill us all soon? But, and I know this is going to come across as harsh, maybe it won't land well, we'll see, but I think it's important to say. You, person I'm talking to right now watching this video, there is a good chance you are not going to die from climate change. Now, I 100% believe climate change is a real thing, it is affecting our Earth, and it will kill people. And this isn't just some future thing of climate change's effects will kill people, it's happening now. In India, the heat waves are killing people, the flood in Pakistan, these are all examples, and there's so many more of people dying because of the effects of climate change. And while we'll all feel the effects of climate change to some degree, experts suggest that people like you and me are not going to be the most vulnerable. Those with internet access, those in primarily English-speaking countries, the majority of my audience being in the United States, we are in an incredibly privileged position of not feeling the full effects of climate change in the next century the way others will. And this is where I feel like I'm gonna ruffle feathers, but I think it's an incredibly ignorant and privileged take to simply give up and say, what's the point? The point is that we have an opportunity with our privileged positions to make change. When we plan our financial futures, we can better leverage our time and money to help others. We can create a future for ourselves where we can donate more, or we can quit our jobs and channel our labor into more impactful causes. That's a huge reason why I'm pursuing FIRE, which is the Financial Independence Retire Early movement. I want to dedicate a meaningful chunk of my life to doing things that might not necessarily make a lot of money, but can create a net positive in the world. If I simply said, well, climate change is going to do me in, then I'm abandoning all the potential good that I could do because of the money and time that I have been lucky enough to have. And beyond the financial side of things, we also have the ability to affect change through our lifestyles. Assuming many of you are in a first world country like the United States, our lifestyles are a big part of the problem. We are creating precedents of what it means to have a high standard of living, and it's unsustainable. From indulging in fast fashion to the overeating of meat, Americans actually eat twice as much protein as we need per day, which blew my mind. It all has an effect. And before someone says it, yes, corporations and governments need to create change. I think that's how we're going to make systematic change. But we can't forget that corporations and governments work off the signals and actions of individuals. We can't get complacent and think it's not something that we have to act on. For more succinct capturing of my thoughts, here's @TheGarbageQueen on TikTok talking about this.
Don't stop saving for retirement. And no, I'm not some financial TikToker trying to get you to make investments. I'm a scientist trying to get you to not give up on climate action. Because giving up now means pulling a boomer. Because if we continue to ignore the problem and then pass it off onto future generations, we're no better than boomers. Also, it's definitely not too late to fix it. We have all of the tools and we just need to implement them. And I know that a lot of people feel hopeless because they feel they have no power. But when individuals work together, they can have a lot of power, which is why we need more people to not give up and to become climate activists.
By the way, if you're interested in using your investing efforts to help combat climate change, I would really recommend looking into ESG funds. ESG stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. And ESG funds invest in companies that aim to have sustainable and societal impact, such as addressing climate change. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about the dangerous psychology behind existential dread. At the crux of all of this is the conflict between short and long-term thinking. When it comes to growing wealth, long-term thinking is key. As I've mentioned in a few of my videos already, including Influencers Don't Care If You Go Broke and Will Lucky Girl Syndrome Make You Rich or Broke, investing is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Building wealth takes time and patience. Short-term thinking, on the other hand, is often driven by impulsive, emotionally motivated decisions, which can be detrimental to your financial future. For example, let's say you're investing in the stock market. Short-term thinking, when paired with stories of societies nearing collapse, might make you buy and sell stocks quickly based on market fluctuations and doomsday headlines. You might not even enter the stock market altogether because you're worried the United States will crumble within the decade. And because of that short-term thinking, you're likely to fall behind financially. But long-term thinking allows you to push through the fluctuations, the doubt, and the scary headlines. That type of mindset allows you to ride the wave of compound interest over the years and build real wealth. Existential dread ruins personal finance because it preys on our monkey brains and essentially makes us self-sabotage. So part of why I'm so passionate about this topic is because of what I mentioned earlier with our unique positions to affect climate change. I truly believe that there can be an incredible relationship between personal finance and making the world a better place. Trying to explain and promote that relationship is a huge pillar of what I want my YouTube channel to be about, because I think we tend to think about personal finance as wildly individualist and maybe even greedy. for good reason. Personal is literally in the name, but I like to think of it like the oxygen mask on a plane. You have to take care of yours before you can help others. When we have a financial plan in place and can achieve some level of financial security for ourselves, we are so much better equipped to help others. Just think about the energy that millennials and Gen Z have towards addressing climate change, women's health, equity, and so on. That is world-changing, powerful energy, if given the chance. And I think that chance is made so much stronger when we protect our financial futures, from saving for retirement to lessening our consumption so that we can save more money. Basically, all the different topics that I want to spend talking about on this channel. And I know I'm rambling on and on at this point, but I want to end with this. I think that a certain level of existential dread is innate to our human existence. It's not something we can fully escape, but we can change how we respond to it. Like how the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once explains, nothing matters. From the nihilist point of view, it's nothing matters, so screw everyone, it's all awful. But from the philosophically existentialist point of view, nothing matters, and isn't that great? Doesn't that give us the opportunity to approach things positively and abandon cynicism? It might be a loose analogy, but I like to think of the topic of personal finance and existential dread similarly. We can take the nihilist route and say the world is awful, it's coming to an end, so why save it at all? Or we can take the more positive approach to say, you know, the world does have a lot of awful things, but it's not all awful, and I can make it a little less awful by investing in my future.
Nothing matters.
Loose analogy aside, what do you think about the question of existential dread in personal finance? Are you someone who doesn't like the idea of saving for a future that is so unclear and uncertain? Or do you know people like this? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm going to check them out and respond to them. I'm so curious what you guys think about this topic. And also let me know if you have any ideas for future videos that you want me to cover. I really appreciate you getting this far in the video. I know I went on some tangents here, but hopefully it was entertaining and informative and all of that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Check out my other video essays. I'll link a few that I recommend down below. And thank you guys just again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. I finished with 4 minutes before work meeting.